school, I think the biggest driver of kind of opportunity within within sort of the post-MBA landscape for an international student is sort of the visa environment. And of course, that is the assumption that search is focused on the U.S. Of course, lots of students, both who are U.S. by citizenship or non-U.S. by citizenship, want to work outside of the U.S. as well. And so I think that's sort of a separate question. But as I think about kind of employment opportunity here, the employers that are kind of willing to sponsor international students tend to fall in a couple of areas. I think, and I can sort of give my philosophical reason why, but I think they actually tend to very largely map the overall MBA interest area. So I think if you look at our employment data, it looks pretty much like most schools' employment data is the most popular areas for all of our students to go into, kind of in rank order, tend to be consulting, financial services, technology, and then it can vary a little bit. I'd say retail is usually number 4 now, and I think that's driven very largely by e-commerce, which you could argue fall under technology as well. Right. And when you look at where our international students go, it's the same. So directionally, I don't think that there's sort of a wide disparity between the outcomes for international students versus those with U.S. work authorization. But I think digging into sort of the why a little bit more, I think traditionally speaking, I think this continues to be the case, consulting and financial services tend to be the industries most willing to sponsor. Sure. Right. And again, I can sort of get into philosophically why I think that's the case, but when you think about the business models of different organizations versus a manufacturing company or versus a consumer products company, the sort of number one resource that a financial services or consulting firm has is human capital. And I think the desire is to have the absolute best human capital deployed throughout that sure. company, regardless of sort of origin, if you will. It's not to say human capital isn't immensely important in those other places, but just it being, a product versus a service, your financial statements look a little bit different in that regard. And so again, philosophically, that's why my sort of assumption is that those have traditionally been the industries most willing to sponsor. And then I think it's sort of a virtuous or vicious circle, if you will. Those tend to be the companies that international students then feel the most security in reaching out to jobs. And they're also, consulting in particular is a great launching off point to many different places. So I wouldn't say that that's the only reason that international students may be interested in consulting. Like marketing. I think for work authorization reasons, it's very common perhaps for an MBA student to start in their home region and in that home office. But I think that's very rarely the stopping point. So if you are an international student who's perhaps interested very deeply, kind of functionally in something like marketing, it may make the most sense to start within a regional office, but set your sights on being able to have a global career thereafter. Speaking from an evaluation standpoint, we're looking to get information on 3 things. We're looking for your academic potential because we want to make sure that we're setting you up for success in what's a rigorous program and one that it rewards intellectual curiosity. And so we're looking at your academics in that light. We are looking to gauge your professional impact, your ability to be both a leader and a collaborator in the roles that you go on into. And then we're looking for engaged community members, people who are going to come here and make an impact, but also go out into the communities that they join after their time at SOM and make a meaningful contribution. So everything that we're collecting from you or trying to assess from you really flows back to one of those or several of those few areas. So again, in addition to the same essay question that we've used for the last couple of years, because we think it's been really insightful and has given us some really nice results for the last few years. And that question is that we ask you to describe the biggest commitment that you've ever made. Business school is certainly a big commitment, and so we are interested in hearing about how you've approached major commitments in your life before. We have video questions. We were, I think, one of the first schools to use this, although it's becoming a little bit more commonplace now, which is an opportunity to hear a member of my team ask you a questions, something very akin to what you'd prepare for in a typical MBA interview, and to provide your response. It's not meant to trip you up or be a brain teaser or anything like that. It puts a little bit more of a human face to the application. It allows us to assess language skills for those for whom English might not be a first language. It gives us a little bit of a chance to hear how you think on your feet. That's an important skill to have in an MBA classroom and just about anywhere else. So that's one additional component of the application. And there's one more piece that I'd like to bring up, because it's not brand new this year, but it's the first time we'll be rolling it out to every single applicant. And it's something that we call our behavioral assessment. And it's an online module that you'll complete after you've submitted your application. It takes about 20 minutes. It requires no preparation. And it assesses a number of interpersonal and intrapersonal skills that we know are associated with business school success. We've been working with ETS on this, which is, of course, our friends who bring you the GRE. And we rolled it out over the past couple of years into certain segments. So, for instance, this past year, we had everyone who interviewed take the assessment. And as I said, in the coming year, everyone will take it. And what that test really allows us to do is better predict who is going to be able to perform well once they get here into the program. We've done a lot of analysis on this with ETS. And it really it helps us take chances on people. So if you have an applicant who maybe hasn't scored as highly as they wanted to on their GMAT or their GRE, or had a little bit more trouble in undergrad than they had perhaps wanted to within that experience, we want to be able to identify the students who have had those experiences but still are going to perform really well once they get here. And we found that this assessment is something that helps point for international students, neither of which require a U.S. co-signer. That's Prodigy and Quorum. And I won't get into sort of the specific details of each, but generally speaking, our students find it useful to start inquiries with both and understand what, based on their own individual circumstances, what's the best fit there. Both allow international students to borrow up to 80% of the cost of attendance there. So that's kind of useful to know. We have a financial aid office that has, again, a strong history of working with a highly international student population over many years. So this is definitely an area of expertise. And I will say, in thinking about scholarships, which I'll say we have a merit-based scholarship process here. So when you submit your application, you're automatically considered for our merit-based scholarships, and they are, that assessment is based on the same things that I talked about that we are looking for within sort of the MBA selection process as a whole. That academic preparedness, the professional impact, and the ability to contribute as a community member. And so as we are assessing those things for admission, we're also thinking about where are those really exemplified within the incoming class, and that's where we will offer scholarships. We do have quite a few scholarships focused specifically on international students. The one that comes to mind that we've really put a lot of effort behind this past year is a Global Leaders from India MBA scholarship program. So that is up to 5 either half or full tuition scholarships for citizens of India. We have scholarships focused on pretty much every region of the world, China, Asia Pacific. We have Yale Africa Impact Scholarships. We also partner with a lot of organizations to offer kind of regionally based scholarships. So we partner with an organization called Harambe, which is focused on African entrepreneurs. We have a partnership with FUNED in Mexico, sponsors for educational opportunity in London. Again, most regions of the world, we have either a partnership with an organization or a scholarship that is entirely Yale funded. And so, again, you don't need to sort of opt in to be considered for these scholarships. We're automatically thinking about you if you fall into one of these categories. In a number of different ways. If you are waitlisted during the process, within the waitlist process, you're able to get feedback from my team, and so that's a very valuable way to get a sense, even in round, of how, or I should say, in cycle, of where you might look to improve your application. But even for those who were not waitlisted, we do offer the option of getting feedback from a committee member on your application over the summer. And so we'll undertake that process, in fact, very shortly. And so I would definitely encourage, if you're looking to it really depends on whether we kind of need more information that we feel like we'll get out of an interview. If you've maybe had a very significant job change, we may call you back for an interview. So I would not, I know a lot of people put a lot of stock into that question of, have I received an interview or not? And it's a little bit different for reapplicants. So I would just keep that in mind.
Right. So what I hear,
like anything, you get better at something the more you do it, and the more you can learn and get feedback from it. And so I think our applicants who truly take that process to heart and are able to kind of look honestly at their applications and make improvements where they know that they can, have been very successful in this process. A course called Global Virtual Teams that does just that. It pairs the students within our program with students literally across the globe in different business schools to work on a kind of a virtual project and navigate all of those challenges. Unfortunately, we have the technological capabilities here within the school here to enable that kind of thing. So that's just one example, but we are constantly thinking of new ways to integrate the technology that we have here and the technology we can develop into the classroom experience. Are really big and messy and immersive, and they integrate multiple formats and media. So a raw case may pull in financial statements and interviews with key stakeholders and media clippings and gigantic data sets, and all of this is thrown at you. And part of the challenge of a raw case is you have to learn what's important to the questions you're answering and what's not. Instead of being given everything that you need to figure out what you need to answer a particular question. And this fits in very nicely again to our integrated curriculum, because that is, again, what you have to do as a manager. You have to integrate a lot of different ideas, a lot of different information that may be useful or may not be useful. And so the whole idea here is we want to create an experience here, a learning experience here that's much more reflective of the roles and challenges you'll encounter in the real world. So one way I've heard it put is a raw case, and the way that you would discuss it in class is a lot like if your manager came to you and gave you a week to answer a really big kind of question and come up with a recommendation and do your analysis based on whatever tools you have, and come back with that recommendation at the end of the week with very little guidance. And so that's sort of what I think the experience of being thrown into a raw case is. And of course, you work with your learning teams here to get different perspectives on what the most important information is. Comes to mind that I think kind of plays nicely on some of the idea of having to look at the information from different perspectives is a case on MasterCard. So it again, thinking about sort of the technology focus, it's focused on digital marketing and how our ability to interact with consumers in a digital way has really changed the customer experience there. So it starts by having our students investigate a lot of kind of marketing and consumer interaction questions, but then at some point it pivots to talking more about the organizational challenges that a company like MasterCard faces in integrating kind of your old school traditional marketers with a different talent pool that's focused on digital marketing and kind of what the human capital challenges are. So I like that example because, again, it's to mind different question. It's actually focused on an Indian biometric ID system called Aadhaar. This is, of course, this is a case that is taught both in our international experience trip that goes to India, as well as a global business and society. And it looks at some of those issues that you were talking before about, kind of having tremendous amounts of data and information and what the kind of upsides and downsides of that are. My understanding is that this biometric ID system has registered nearly 1 billion people in India, and a big intent of this is to give access to lower income individuals to enable them to more fully participate in society, which of course is a great upside, but there is a lot of potential for hacking and for other sort of nefarious use of the data there. And so this course explores some of those issues as well.
I think co-taught by a number of professors, but one of them is a sort of renowned general in the United States, former General Stanley McChrystal, which I know is a very popular class, and certainly has many, grand strategy has many implications for business for sure, but really plays across sectors and stretches people to think in a lot of different ways there. There are which is run by a longtime marketing professor here, Ravi Dar, who is certainly a fan favorite here, and the opportunity to work on kind of real life business cases alongside a professor who is frequently called into organizations across sectors as sort of a marketing expert, I think is a really wonderful thing. There is we have one of my personal favorites is Professor Amy Wisniewski, who is a organizational behavior professor here. She runs one of our, really the very first course you'll take in the core here, which is called Managing Groups and Teams, which sets the foundation for everything you do from here on out, because you won't take a single course at Yale SOM that doesn't involve you to collaborate and to work on teams. She does a lot of fascinating research in the area of sort of jobs and careers and what people's kind of true callings are, and is not only phenomenal in the classroom, but just a tremendous community member here as well, and someone like many of our professors who is very approachable and spends a lot of her own time kind of interacting with her students one-on-one, even outside the context. Small, although it has grown. So when the Silver Scholar program was launched, it was originally limited only to Yale College seniors, and I think we had about 5 or 6 people in each class. So it has expanded. There's no limitations on sort of your starting point there, and currently the typical class has anywhere from 15 to 20 Silver Scholars.
It's not a cap or a quota. I think we're certainly open to expanding that, and in fact, our application pool has continued to expand in that area. And I have to say, we get fantastic Silver Scholar applicants. So while there may not be sort of intent to grow it at this point in time, intentionally, we are certainly more than open to growing it. So there's, we would certainly be open if there were 25 Silver Scholars in the coming year to be in the class. So I do want to stress that isn't sort of an intentional cap there. I think it's been a really successful program for a number of reasons. As I think about it, as you mentioned, a lot of other programs have launched deferred admission or various other kind of early entry configurations, but I do think Silver Scholars remains the only opportunity on the market to enter into your MBA program immediately after undergraduate, and I think that appeals to people who are really ready to get a jump start on their career, are focused on and sort of knowledgeable that the tools that they'll be able to build in an MBA will help get them there, and who also want that ability to have a kind of a work experience to bolster their credentials and be able to put their core learnings into place right away. So just very briefly, the structure of the Silver Scholars program is 1 year in the core curriculum, at least 1 year, though it could be more, in a full-time kind of internship experience, and then you return for your final year of electives once you've concluded your internship experience. And so, to your point that you have individuals sitting in the classroom amongst others who have had potentially very substantial work experience, in so many ways, the cohorts that we bring in and the learning teams that you sit in on are diverse. People are coming from lots of different backgrounds, lots of different geographies, lots of different industries, lots of different academic experiences. So I see this as just one more dimension of diversity. The people that we bring into the Silver Scholars program may not have had full-time work experience, but they have had very, very substantial opportunities either in the extracurricular space or in their research that they've done as undergraduates or in their internships. We're looking for people who have truly distinguished themselves in those areas. So they're not just coming with sort of run-of-the-mill undergraduate experiences. They've really got something meaningful that has helped demonstrate their potential to be a strong leader and a strong collaborator down the line. And I mean, I think, again, that 1 year or one or more year kind of experience in the middle of your Silver Scholar experience is a very important credential builder. And I think part of what is important for a Silver Scholar to know coming into the program is you're going to have to work to get that 1 year experience. Of course, we have a great career development office here who works specifically with Silver Scholars on that and how to pitch those roles. But you do have to be a little bit entrepreneurial and be able to get on your feet and sell an organization on why this makes sense. But I'll say, having had many years of this program under our belt, our students are wildly successful in being able to do that. And it's not always just a kind of a 1 year experience. Our students get very creative, and not surprisingly, they want to kind of get as much into that time as possible. So sometimes we have students who will do sort of a traditional summer internship at the front end of it, and then do something that's a year long, or they'll split it into 2 6-month experiences. Again, I think Silver Scholars tend to be very enterprising, and so want to cram the most in there. And as I said, our career development office really does an excellent job of helping coach students through that process and figure out